Howdy folks, this is Murray of 3Bar D Videos. In this video, I pitted Babushka, a factory Tula SKS, against Bubba, my highly tricked out, also Tula SKS. That's also known as Sasha.
Oh, Bubba, no. No, I'm gonna be alright.
So to pit these two against each other, I thought it'd be fun to do it using the 2022 Cabin Fever Challenge. So basically, going off the rules of that challenge, it's a time marksmanship challenge where you have to unleash 5 rounds from 4 different shooting positions at an 8-inch circle 100 meters away. And it's time, so the score is calculated as a kind of a balance between your time and the amount of hits you actually scored on target. So Sasha here, because she is a heavily modified SKS, she falls into the unlimited category. And then this factory Tula SKS is absolutely stock, pretty much the way you pull it out of the crate, minus the Cosmoline. And it falls as a vintage, in the vintage category of the Cabin Fever Challenge. So I thought this would be, my original plan was to pit Sasha against Talufa, which is Type 81 LMG Tabuk sniper clone that I've been working on. But unfortunately, Talufa doesn't quite have all the parts she needs to be labeled as complete. So unfortunately, she's not quite going to be complete in time to pit these two against each other for the Cabin Fever Challenge this year. But hopefully I'm able to do that next year. So I thought rather than doing that, I would instead do basically a Bubba'fied SKS against a factory SKS, because that's quite a heated debate online. There's a lot of opinions for either or, and I thought it'd be really fun to kind of try out the two in the same shooting environment and see which one pulls ahead of the other. So basically I did one official attempt for each. I warmed up all day, like when we arrived out here I got right to shooting and stuff, and warmed myself up. Is there something out there? You hear something? Might be those horses. They might have came back. Anyways, and then I went ahead and took one attempt with each. So this keep thinking I hear something. Not that matters. Nothing's gonna come here anyways. Me and Jimmy were out here in the Alberta foothills, and rumor has it the bears are already coming out of hibernation. So we're a little on edge right now because we're way out in the foothills by ourselves. Nobody's in sight or within hearing range, and we're hearing things out in the bush. Earlier there was a bunch of wild horses out there, but who knows? So we are going to be going to that embankment down there. I've rangefindered that out to 100 meters, so that's where we're going to be placing the 8-inch Cabin Fever Challenge target for the first attempt. Okay, I'm going to find some heavy stuff to chuck things in this. Kind of worried about putting rocks in here, because if a bullet passes through the box and strikes the rock might explode inside the box and just confetti everything. hold that one. Crap. Alrighty, so now we'll go over the results. So for Sasha, the Bubba SKS, I managed to get only 11 out of 20 hits on target in the black here. So not as good as I was hoping to do. And I did it in 81.87 seconds, so that gives me a score of 67.18. Now for Babushka, the factory SKS, I also got 11 hits out of 20, but I did it slower. So I did it in 105.19 seconds, giving me a score of 51.99. So it does look like, based off of these results, that the Bubba SKS did pull ahead of the factory stock SKS, but not by much, surprisingly. I was definitely hoping to get more hits that day than what I did for both these guns. Going off of some of the other 7.62x39 guns I have, like Q-Sun and Vera, my Type 81 and my VZ58, if I really focus and try hard, I've managed to get in the low hundreds, so like 114 up to 128 or something like that, I believe. I was hoping to get somewhere in the low hundreds with Sasha here, because I know she's capable of it. It just was, I guess that particular day I was really rusty and not shooting too hot. It was still a really good experience despite my poor marksmanship on my part. It was really interesting to jump between the two configurations of rifle in a span of just like less than a minute. So that really, in the course of fire of this competition, it really kind of showed me some things I liked about each platform and things I didn't like. Sasha, in the configuration you see her now, excluding this bipod, weighs 11.02 pounds, whereas I measured this factory SKS, this Tula SKS, as 8.44 pounds. So, like I said earlier in the video, this factory SKS is just a 1953 model, Tula model SKS. It's a numbers matching. Bought it for around $300, I think. It was a super grade model from Cabela's, and I was fortunate enough to be able to I didn't handpick it, but a person brought it out and I was able to look it over because I was curious. I walked into the Cabela's and was like, "Hey, I see you got super grades in your flyer here. What exactly is that? I want to see what a super grade SKS looks like." And the guy went and grabbed me one, and I had to agree with him. It was definitely a super grade SKS because I looked over all the places that you should check on an SKS for rust and poor condition and whatnot, and this thing is absolutely immaculate. As far as, I don't know too much about like the history and the markings and all that, but as far as I can tell, given the state of the condition of this gun, I wouldn't be surprised if it's never been fired or if barely fired any rounds, because it's just immaculate. Sasha here on the other hand is a 1954 Tula SKS. It was a numbers matching when I bought it new. Well, not new, but you know, surplus from the Shooting Edge in Calgary quite some time ago. I think like at least 10 years ago or pushing 10 years ago. I paid $250 for her, and I proceeded to instantly start Bubba'fying it because I wasn't a really big fan of factory SKS rifles. I wanted to take the SKS and just tweak it in all the little ways I think it was needed to make it funner and more pleasant to shoot. And as you can see, this is the final kind of iteration of her. I'm not going to elaborate too much into the details of this build, but because I do have a build series on her already on my channel that you can check out, and I do plan to shortly in the next month or two here do an overview of her, an in-depth overview as kind of like a conclusion to the build series. But basically, in layman or in a quick overview, she's sporting a custom laminate stock that I carved myself, a Russian Malot side rail, which allows me to equip this MPZ SVD optic, 3 to 9 power, 24mm objective lens. She's running like a Duck Billows mod Tapco magazine system, and then a 7.62 systems bolt mag release. She has a custom bolt release that I made myself / bolt hold opens, a trigger job, and a bunch of other little things here and there. So things I liked and disliked. I think I'll just go over things I liked actually. That's what I got written down here. So we'll start with Babushka, this factory SKS. Things that stood out when I shot the course of fire with her. So one thing I really liked about the factory SKS is the openness of the system. So what I mean by that is because you're not kind of lost looking for a scope and whatnot, when you're shooting her and you run empty or you have a malfunction or anything like that with the action, you can instantly see it and what's going on, because when the action locks back, it's like literally right in your field of view of your sight and looking down the irons. And I really did like that. Not that, of course, this gun jammed during the course of fire or has any risk of doing so, but it's something to appreciate. Meanwhile, with Sasha here, especially using the rubber eyepiece that comes with the SVD scopes, this is optional, but I always tend to use them. This design really does isolate your situational awareness to just what's happening in the scope, because you got your eye up to this and it's designed to kind of isolate your sight from anything but the sight picture, which has its advantages in some cases, like shooting into directions where the sun is shining in your face. This is gives you an extreme advantage, but it also has its disadvantages. If you have a malfunction or if you think the action went empty, you can't really see that until you pull your face back away from this eye cup, and then you can see what's going on. So that's just something I noticed with this that I liked. Another thing I liked about the factory SKS is the fact that when it runs empty, it's truly empty. You don't have to take anything out of it. The action's locked back. You just instantly proceed to reach down and grab a new stripper clip, load some rounds in. So that's pretty nice. Super simplistic. And then finally, the other big thing I liked about this gun is it is, as you saw earlier, it is lighter. It's 8.4 pounds opposed to 11 pounds. So it's lighter overall, and it's balanced better. I think As for how it's balanced better, I'm not sure if it necessarily weighs less on the front end, because you can imagine she does have a lot of reasons to weigh more because she's got the silly bayonet and stuff like that. Where Sasha here is quite tailored, like she literally has this hollow laminate forend and a flash hider, and that's it. So in theory, I think Sasha should by rights weigh a little less on the front end, but this one feels lighter on the front end, I think mainly due to its squatty nature. The length of pull on the stock on stock SKS rifles is quite short in my opinion, and for most other people I've talked to. So in doing so, that kind of sucks everything closer to your shoulder. With the con, that makes it a little awkward at the shoulder too, in my opinion. Like I find that my grip posture when I'm shooting this gun and how I kind of have to bend my wrist and rest my thumb and put my finger on the trigger, I don't like it. It's not comfortable in my opinion. But it does make it a little better balance. Whereas Sasha here, I purposely stretched out the stock a few inches longer than what's even on a real SVD for my own personal comfort. So it's more comfortable at the shoulder, but it moves everything further forward away from you, thus making the gun feel a little bit more front heavy, is I think where that comes from. So now moving on to Sasha, the things I like about Sasha that ultimately, in my opinion, made her perform better and achieve a higher score than Babushka here. The number one thing is definitely the optic. The optic, of course, as anybody will know, doesn't improve the accuracy of the gun, but it just makes it that much more simple and effective to accurately aim on target. And that's why I think the optic is an advantage. With the optic, I put my eye up to this thing, I look instantly, my eye gets the perfect eye relief and field of view, and all I gotta do is manipulate the gun so that the peak of that chevron and the SVD op reticle just lines up in the center of the dot on the target, and then I pull the trigger. So all just falls down to me after that point, but in terms of putting the point of aim on the target, you just can't beat the optic. The irons can be really good, especially if you got a lot of practice with them, but I find you gotta have to practice, and even then, I just think there's not really that compelling of an argument to say that the irons are more efficient. Like, just by the simple physics of how you use irons, how you have to ensure that you're lining up multiple steps with one another. It's not as efficient as a good optic, in my opinion. So I was able to get on target quicker and be more confident about my shots. However, there is a con to that. With having more confidence brought by the optic, that might incur you to also be a little bit more cocky or rush, and then you fail to maybe pull the trigger properly after that or something, which might have been a big reason why I only managed to get 11 hits with this. Is that. Another thing I like about Sasha is the trigger. The trigger on Sasha, I did a trigger job on her. I polished it, changed the engagement on the sear a little bit to a more neutral instead of negative, which is a little dicey on SKS, but I don't know, I've done it enough times and tweaked it enough that I kind of feel like I found a healthy, safe balance. She measures 4 pounds. That's her brake. It's a nice smooth brake, very nice trigger. I also put an over travel stop on her, so both these guns are totally disarmed, by the way, of course, so I'm going to be tampering with the triggers here. This trigger with the over travel stop, it pulls back, it brakes, and it only goes about 8 millimeters away or so from the trigger guard before it stops. And then after that you can proceed to slowly let off until you hit the reset. The factory SKS, on the other hand, it brakes at 5 pounds, which is hard for me to believe, but I just measured it. It honestly feels like a 7-pound trigger. It's terrible. But when you pull it and you hit and it brakes, the trigger literally travels all the way to the back of the trigger guard. And then from there you proceed to let it all the way back until you hit the reset. So overall, this trigger just sucks in every way compared to Sasha's trigger. I think that's it with the trigger. I already kind of touched on it, but the stock layout on Sasha, in my opinion, is nicer. That's a huge part of that is simply because I carved the stock myself to my liking. So I made the pistol grip to the right size that fits me and situates my finger exactly on the right place of the spot on the trigger. obviously the longer length of pull, which is the biggest complaint people have with SKS rifles. And I guess it's a nice, lots of real estate up front to hold on to. The magazine, despite the stripper clips being pretty good, I still find detachable magazines to be a little bit more foolproof and easier to master. There's less to go wrong. So, and I was ultimately faster with the magazine with less effort. And then the final improvement was also, I think, the bolt release. It saves a little bit of time. Just being able to poke up with your finger, or sometimes I have to use like 2 fingers to get the strength, because depending on how looped the bolt hole open piece is in the gun, it kind of binds a little bit. But I think that shaves fractions of a second off the reload time. So there you go. That is the results. I hope you found this video interesting, and I look forward to seeing more entries for SKS rifles, especially Bubba SKS rifles next year in the 2023 Cabin Fever Challenge. We definitely get a lot of stock SKSs every year, but I think to date I am the only dude to really submit a modified SKS or a Bubba SKS. So I'd like to see more. I know there's tons of them out there, hence this heated debate of Bubba versus Babushka. Yeah, so that's kind of a little ramble on these 2 guns and my 2022 Cabin Fever Challenge attempt for Vintage and Unlimited. So I hope you enjoyed. And until next time, take care. I think I know why I'm not shooting as good today. It's because I'm not wearing the Russian gear. The Russian guns are upset with me. They're like, where does your allegiance lie? If we thought you liked Russian stuff.